What's up, Blackberries? Welcome to another installment of the Blackberry View. And as you can see, we've done some remodeling. We have lost. We took out the old and in with the new. So I want you to welcome to the new Blackberry, the new Blackberry crew today. No, I'm just kidding. Today's gonna be a special episode. If you don't know, you should know at this point, cause like, hello. But it's Black History Month. And so we want to do a special episode to kind of talk through social justice. We're still gonna give you all that T-shade and all the theatrics, but we're also gonna give you some real ass shit that you can apply to your life and hopefully make change in your communities. But without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce my beautiful co-host today. Let me give you the new cue.
Hey y'all, my name is August. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I'm just excited to be here.
All right, that's good. This is the new Zach.
Hello, my name is Dwayne Jones. I do not have a twin. No. But I use he, him, his pronouns as well, and I am very excited to be on The View today. Thank y'all.
And I am the new Adrian. So I'm gonna go ahead and start by man, it's the one and only ZIGGY_the Alpha on all social media platforms. I'm also 1/3 of the Swelly podcast, and I am grateful to be here today with my brothers here at the Blackberry View, man. Thank y'all for having us.
And of course, last but not least, you know your boy, the one and only Harold Brown. That bitch will forever be that bitch. Just make sure you put the baddest in front of that bitch. Thank you. It's happy to be here with y'all. So let's go ahead and jump right on into it. We're gonna get to the daily squeeze, y'all. Now I got a 2-part daily squeeze. So I'm gonna need y'all's insight, you know, because it's Black History Month, we gotta do extra. You know, I'm gonna do the most every time. Because that's what we gotta do on Black History Month. All 28 days. 29 on a leap year. All right. So, not sure if y'all have been kind of observing what's been happening on Twitter. Sha'Carri Richardson was on Twitter and came out about a Russian Olympic competitor known as Kamila Valievas. I hope I'm saying her name, her last name. Valievas? Yeah, Valievas. And so ultimately, she called out the double standard because Kamila actually tested positive for a drug, a banned drug, and still was allowed to compete in the Russian Olympics. Now, to give you context, the drug was called trimetazidine. And so what it's known for is increasing exercise duration and improving cardio performance. So it actually was a performance enhancement drug, right? And so, mind you, we circle back, because I think we talked about this in one of our prior episodes. Sha'Carri was actually tested positive for marijuana, and mind you, that happened after she got the hard blow dealt to her while she was in Oregon in her trials that her mother had passed. And so we knew that she had used weed in that moment to cope and to deal with that hard reality, and they still knocked her out the Olympics and suspended her, thereby eliminating her competing in the particular race that she was, projected to win. So she took to the Twitter and called out the double standard, and then went even further to say, it's because I'm a black woman, right? It's because I'm a black girl. And so what are y'all thoughts on this and this double standard? Because I believe personally that it is actually a clear as day double standard. But what are y'all's thoughts?
I'm with you. I think it's a double standard too. I know for a lot of things, especially in the Olympics, there can be a lot of nuances, a lot of small details, a lot of loopholes that the general public might not understand. But just from face value, just from what we see, it's clearly a double standard. And my thing is with the Olympics organization and stuff, if it's, if there's more nuance, then tell us what it is. Clearly tell us, why was Sha'Carri suspended and not allowed to compete for marijuana, which I don't know if they ever smoked weed, but marijuana don't enhance shit on me except taking a nap. Versus this other pharmaceutical that the Russian athlete took that is literally performance enhancing. So it's like, if it's not double standard, how come y'all can't explain to us how it's not? But y'all silence, just from me and my perspective, says a whole lot.
Now, the Court of Arbitration of Sport, CAS is what it's called, basically went back, and they're the ones who, I guess, lifted the temporary, because at one point there was a temporary suspension that she was under. But they went back and lifted, despite the challenges that the people had about the suspension, and they overturned it. Now, mind you, the Court of Arbitration for Sport also feels like that the Russian situation and the U.S. situation are two different types of situations. I think that's a bunch of bullshit personally, but here we are.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up, the Russian situation and the United States situation, because I think it has, a little bit less to do with the double standard, a little bit more to do with how we support our own. I think the Russian government, I think they decided that we're going to die on this hill for this athlete. We're going to decide that it doesn't matter what anybody else outside of our walls thinks. This is what we're going to do, and we're going to die on this hill for our athlete. And I think when it came to Sha'Carri Richardson, it was split down the middle. Of course, you had black people that all wanted her to succeed, wanted her to run, but then you had the majority of people who decided that THC was not going to be something that was going to be allowed in our sport. And I think it goes to speak to a bigger problem of stigmatism of weed. When you think about historically weed, you don't think about white people, you don't think about Hispanic people. The first thing you think about is black people, hip hop culture, and what it means. So people have decided that this is a black drug. And if anybody who smokes this drug or uses this drug, regardless of the actual fact that it's a majority drug that's used by everybody, they have decided that if anybody who is in a position of power or a place where they feel like they are uplifted, you're going to be held accountable for using this drug. I don't care if I'm a CEO, I'm a businessman, I'm a politician, and I use it. No, you will not use it because it's a stigma in America that it's a black drug, it's a hip-hop culture drug.
Right. Can I add on something? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut. As long as you're black, that stigma is placed on you. Because we know plenty of white folks that smoke weed, but they're considered hippies, free spirit, hipsters, the cool crowd. I feel like when it comes to marijuana, just like what you're saying, but that stigma really hardest hits is the black community. Oh, yeah, so sure. Black folks in a position can't do it. White folks, they chill. And I mean, we know a bunch of CEOs that snort lines and,
Man, we know educators, we know politicians, right, we know a lot of people.
Right, but they don't have that stigma attached.
I just don't know CEOs, period.
Okay. right.
I'm not in those spaces. I'm not at those tables.
I'm not privy to it.
I mean, I think for me, the big thing is just like, honestly, when you hear about this comparison, really, it's just like for dramatic effect, like, pretends to be shocked. Like, it's not shocking. This isn't a surprise, sadly. I mean, great topic. Not trying to downplay it, of course. But definitely in the sense of just like, just pretend to be shocked. But like, again, it's going to go back and forth. It's always going to be there. There's never going to be really this, I'm sad at this point. I don't really think there's going to be a change. Like, we're always just going to have this struggle. And if we are comparing a black and brown individual to a white person, the white person's always going to be okay. It's going to be seen as cool. So it's just a problem. But again, I'm glad the topic's at least being brought up and should be, since this other woman, don't follow sports, but I'm glad she's doing great. Other woman is definitely in a different situation, a different country, all of the above.
So I do have a question and a follow-up question, because just listening to what you just said. So how do we, as minorities, as black and brown people, continue to remain hopeful if you yourself, and I've heard this from a lot of different minority people, say that I don't see an end in sight. I don't see a time where we will actually be able to say, oh no, we're gonna go to bat for the minority. We're gonna go to bat for the black and brown people here. The white person is wrong. When will there be a time where the pendulum is flipped, where we can feel like, oh, our best interest is at heart? So you don't feel like that will happen?
I feel like it is possible, but definitely not an easy goal to get to. Because just from my view, to get to that point, I feel like we have to become completely 100% committed. But I think the closest word I can think of is self-reliant. So like when we are making so much of our own businesses, our own organizations, that we don't need the Olympics, we don't need the NFL, we don't need the NBA, we don't need to rely on these organizations that at the top of them is mainly all white. And then I feel like if we can get to that point, then we don't have to worry about being compared or having double stigmas in professional world. Because I'm also believe that racism will always exist.
That's interesting, because I don't think black capitalism is the answer. That's just me.
Yeah, and I agree. It might not be. Like I said,
Black History Month it is. Go support a black-owned business, y'all.
I just feel like we're closer to being homeless than we are to Jeff Bezos.
You are right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if we're keeping it a bean.
I would say this. I think, in media, they've painted this idea of the radical activist who's always like tear down the walls of the establishment.
The hotel.
Right. Well, not even the hotel, but just like the person who's like wanting to tear down everything and all things that are oppressive. And I used to think like I'm not that radical, but actually on second thought, I think I am. And I say this because, in logically speaking, I'm trying to say this is, I guess, as calming as I think people can process it. If you don't process it like this, then fuck you. But every institution that's built in a hierarchy, built in a system of power where somebody has more than the other people, has to be eradicated. Like, and there's going to be natural power imbalances that happen anyway, right? Naturally speaking, the birds get what's in the air, the fish gets what's in the water, right? That's just a natural power balance. That had nothing to do with nothing.
Fish can't fly, birds can't. Most birds can't swim.
Right. And so at that point, I said to say we have to really be intentional about critiquing all these systems, whether it's Olympics, whether it's education, whether it's religion, whatever these institutions and entities look like, that have been historically in its core rooted in building up a system of power where those who are white, just keeping it honest, are more advantageous than those who are any of a darker hue, i.e. black folk. And so this is another example, and this is my hill I'm always willing to die on. Black women are treated like shit. And this just shows you on a global level how a black woman's experiences and her well-being is not prioritized, nor is it considered. And she's gonna always get the shittier crap, the shittier end of the stick from everybody else. I still think we owe an apology to Monique. That's another episode. Still think we owe an apology to Chris and Michelle. That's another episode. Like, there are black women who have, in all intents and purposes, bared their soul in some capacity and or taken the brunt of a ridiculous ass action that really probably wasn't as deep as the world wanted to make it.
Right.
And then turn around, let it happen to somebody else with a different level of power and influence. And we're like, oh my God, we gotta believe them.
Right.
I think a quick factor to kind of go back to the question that you talked about, though, in regards to like how, because I mean, the kind of my statement, I feel like when I made it, it did sound like, just kind of giving up at a point.
Yeah.
I think the big thing that we struggle with, too, is that the big factor that we're not considering is time. We can't control time, so we don't know how long this is going to take. We can put time in regards to all of this, in regards to COVID that's going on, you know, all these different situations and things. Like, that's just something we lack control of as humans, and I feel like as humans, we are bothered by that lack of control. And that's what provokes anxiety, provokes all these different things. But without that factor of being able to control that, we're always going to struggle with the sense of like, well, when is this going to end? We sadly don't know that. We'll never, I don't feel like we'll ever get to be to that point. Hopefully one day, maybe.
Do you think it's different for black men?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Because the thing when you say that, I think of the different levels of privilege. Like, regardless of who you are, most people have some level of privilege. So, for example, even black men have the privilege of being men versus being a woman, because I think we can agree that women, and especially black women, are just treated bad in society.
Because patriarchy.
Right, because of patriarchy. And I mean, it could be in so many facets. It can be financial privilege, having more money than others. It can be educational privilege. People with degrees are seen as more educated and more intelligent than people without. So I think, definitely in this realm of all these different privileges, it definitely will be different for black men.
Yeah, I think being a hetero cisgender black male, I think I definitely benefit from a level of patriarchy that sometimes I may be aware of and sometimes I may be unaware of. So I can say that, but I think one thing that you also want to make do is there is two sides to this thing. So for example, like you were mentioning, the other black women who came out and spoke against some kind of, experiences they had that they weren't believed or they weren't treated the same as a white person. You also have a black man, as Terry Crews, who came out and, he spoke on something that he had been, sexually harassed or groped when he was at a party in Hollywood. I can't remember whose house he was at. I want to say it was Adam Sandler, but I don't know for sure. But he was groped and he was sexually harassed. You have the point of aspect where people looked at him and said, oh, this big, strong, straight black man, ain't that, we're not buying that. Or why didn't you knock him out? Or why didn't you push him off you? Or why didn't you do this? But then on the other side, you also have to think about a level of patriarchy that he benefits from. You know what I'm saying? So, and it's kind of hard for Terry Crews on rock with dude because the way he talks. But I don't want to invalidate. I'm with you. I don't want to invalidate that nigga's experience because he doesn't push the black plight forward in my opinion. But I just think that's my spin on it.
Yeah. So I want to also take a segue for a second and go to our second daily squeeze. But I say this to say because, to your point, I think duality is important, right? I think there's a lot of dualistic approach and thought that we have to give into these nuanced experiences because, like, the same people that we cheer for are also still human and they're going to make mistakes. That doesn't mean we have to enable their bullshit, but it also doesn't mean that we turn a blind eye when they are being wronged in the grander scheme of what is the black movement or the advancement of black folk and black and brown folks. Depending on what it is and what the context is, we still fight for you. I don't think that's ever changed, but I think it does become trickier, and particularly in seasons like this during Black History Month, to really give voice to the ways in which black women, black trans women, black queer folk we still stay buckled up in this movement of social change, despite people walking by us on the bus, slapping us in the back of the head every time they come up to the front to get off. You know what I mean? And so I think that's important for us to recognize. So this goes to my next point. Black history has been draining. I'm not sure. Has it been Black history been draining for y'all a little bit?
It's been hilarious.
That's a good word.
It's been hilarious.
I can say as a historian, going back into like primary source documents, this shit is draining.
Hilariously draining.
So if you see my hoodie, it says support black colleges, which is actually the topic of my next daily squeeze. Since the start of Black History Month, about 20 historically black colleges and universities have received bomb threats. I just want to note that when I was doing research about this topic, they received different bomb threats, and it seemed like every other day somebody, another institution is saying that they received bomb threats. They have apprehended 6 white men, and I'm going to go back to that in a second. 6 white men who were arrested for what the FBI is investigating as a hate crime, and it was one other thing, but mostly it's a hate crime, basically, right? So the main thing is a hate crime. And so I kind of want to get you all thoughts on that. I know my good brother here, we're both doctoral students at historically black universities. I'm a doctoral student at the Tennessee State University, baby. Shout out, go Big Blue.
And the Xavier University of Louisiana.
Come on, we here with it. But I also want to circle back. All the articles I found had these guys labeled as 6 tech-savvy juveniles or 6 teens. And so I chose to use my own liberty to elevate them to white men, because I say you're white men in the ways in which a young black boy is irrationally arrested and harassed by law enforcement, and we don't give him the option of being a black boy. He's a black man. And so I want to elevate that up because words mean things, right? We want to call a spade a spade. And so these 6 white men, these fake Steve Jobs ass having ass white folk.
You used to call them niggas.
I did. You saw it? It was right there.
These niggas. Different context, brother. Different context. Don't Joe Rogan it. Come on.
It's been a month.
Hilariously draining.
Bro.
Hilariously draining. You see that Bath and Body Works put out candles in Tiki? All right, no. But stay on topic.
So what are y'all's thoughts about this? Because I know a lot of times historically black colleges and universities don't get a lot of publication in the media about the issues that affect them. I've seen this talked about, but it really hasn't gotten the same type of media attention, I feel, that like a Harvard or a Yale or any other Ivy League institution would get if they were receiving bomb threats.
Y'all mind if I jump in? So my HBCU Xavier was one of the colleges that received bomb threats, and multiple times too. It wasn't just one incident. So I remember, even though I'm an online student, I still get all the emergency texts. I'm like, first, okay, what's going on? Like, this is a one-off thing. And then it wasn't until later that a random article on Facebook, not on New Orleans major newspaper that I do keep up with, it wasn't until this random article on Facebook that I saw that this was a nationwide trend. And when you bring that up, it does make me circle back and almost want to reverse what I said earlier about like going out and creating our own. Because now, even when we create our own present and even in the past, going back to like Greenwood in Tulsa, even when we create our own, they always find ways to stop it. Yeah. Like it's always being no matter what we do to improve ourselves, to put us back at the bottom. Yeah. And I'm with you. I was infuriated when I saw tech savvy and young men and teenagers. I'm like, bitch, y'all didn't consider Trayvon Martin a teenager.
Come on.
He was a thug. Why these little bitches can't be domestic terrorists? Oh, but they're not Muslim. They're not brown, so they're not terrorists. No, these little bitches, you know, I'm getting mad. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm losing my words. Right. But these little bitches like really trying to put so many people in terror that all we're doing is trying to get an education. I'm just trying to get a degree, and now I got to worry about being blown up by these little dumb fucks that got a computer. They're not tech savvy. They're fucking terrorists. Let's call them what they are. And they're white men. They know what they were doing. At this age, you know, as teenagers, you know what you're doing.
Absolutely.
You know you're doing wrong.
I think the irony of it is that if you think about, you know, just as long as you've actually been, you know, in a college world or a mindset, how many times have you heard about just bomb threats at a college, you know what I'm saying, in general? You could probably count on two hands, right or wrong? Yeah. But now that it's Black History Month and we're in this age of internet, we're in this age of troll, we're in this age of I could get this off, and it's technically not any laws against it because our laws are so outdated, but we'll get into that later, that they have made it to where, you know what I'm saying, we can make these threats during Black History Month and it's gonna be okay. It'll be perfectly fine. Because they're so, it's just really ridiculous, man, when you think about that. Because if it was any other month, this would be taken so serious. When what was it that burned down? A big prominent white church, the cathedral. What was that?
Oh, the Notre Dame Cathedral.
And that I saw that everywhere. I plastered across every platform that I use. Like I saw it on everything. It probably was on Black Planet.
Because mainstream media made it a very historic institution that has a lot of history to it. HBCUs, baby, are literally the cornerstone of American history.
And to build off of that, I think the same month or around the same time period that Notre Dame caught on fire, and granted, only a part of the church. It's not like the whole thing burned down.
They had $1 billion in donations to rebuild it.
A museum in Brazil burned down to the ground, and so many primary source archival material, especially dealing with indigenous history in Brazil, was lost completely. Did y'all hear about it in the major news? No, the only reason I heard about it is through my historian network.
And I think around the same time, if I'm not mistaken, the rainforest in I can't remember exactly where it was constantly, it had been burning for X amount of days.
Ages, yeah.
And there was nothing spoken about it. So I think that we get caught in a difficult place when it comes to these type of things that you want to make sure are plastered everywhere. And I think we have to do our due diligence in spreading this information amongst our networks and hoping that it gets out. But I think media is a symbol. And if I learned anything in political science is that symbols matter. And we have to do a very good job of how we market and what we talk about on our social media and media across the board so that white people, I said white people, are held accountable for their actions. And I think that's what I would leave with. That's just me.
I think to also go back to it, I think in regards to when you talked about like the labeling of how they labeled these white men, I think it's because I see it in the media and a lot of different platforms and where they benefit from is they care about the white boys' development. Tech savvy. These boys still have a future to be like, well, they were able to do this. Now they'll be able to
go into OIT.
Exactly, right. But I'm going to be messaging them at the help desk. Like that's the point. Like they still will care and invoke their development, but they don't care about Black and brown individuals and the things that they face. They don't care about their development. It's just, let's give you the label that we always know, plaster it, move forward. But these white boys, let them have a future. Let them be able to move from this and learn something from this.
Yes, let them have a future of doing more threats. So without that, before we get threatened to get the show plugged, we're gonna move to a commercial. But before we go, I'm gonna tell you this: if you have opportunity, please look up your local HBCU, your local historically Black college or university, and find ways to get involved with them. Even if it's just a matter of reposting their content or even donating to their different funds, we greatly appreciate it. Even if you didn't go there, you don't gotta. Yes, if you didn't go there, still support.
We all connect.
That's the original. That's one of the original Black-owned businesses.
Because you don't have to be an alumni to support.
That's it. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Blackberry View. So it's time for us to get into the meat of our show today, y'all. We're going to really talk about social justice and really get into the tweeds of it. So again, because it's Black History Month, I see so many corporations, hop on the bandwagon and trying to find ways to promote certain items or certain like things and gifts and apparel, whatever that signifies Black empowerment or being, Black as fuck or supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, whatever that looks like.
Only in February.
Only in February. And so it made me think. So I think now, I think at this point they've done a good job. And I say good job in a very sarcastic manner. But Target has gotten ingrained into the Black community, baby. When you need that last minute Black History Month apparel, I'm taking my ass to Target. They got a whole section. Now, mind you, I say whole section as in they got like literally like maybe about 10 by 10 square feet of stuff for you to choose from. And then it sells out. And then they want to put some of it back in sparingly. So, but there's another corporation that has, I think commodified being Black. I remember this time last year, Apple came out with the Black Pride, the band, and a new Apple Watch. Here's my thing, and I always said this: in that situation, Apple had an opportunity to maybe say, this, band is going for a particular price. Is lower. The band was still pretty expensive. Yeah, for people who already have it. So if you want Black folk to get it, I'm not saying Black folk are broke, but most Black folk ain't about to go sit out here and just go buy a $100 Apple Watch band just for shits and giggles. Then they wanted to go ahead and also sell a new Apple Watch that came out at the same time. That was $400 something odd dollars. And then they were doing it under the auspice of Black Power, Black Pride. I'm just like, this feels very performative to me.
Because the money's still going in your pocket.
Correct. And so all this to say, I wanted to have a real conversation. And this may be a little bit of an unpopular question to ask during Black History Month, but here we are. Buckle up. Do you think social justice is being played out? I'm going to reserve my comments to the end.
All right, so I can go ahead and start. I have a very different take on this, so crucify me as you will. My Savior already died on the cross. Taps cards. So
you can go to hell.
What I would like to say is that I am not mad. I think that we have for so long not been seen by these big conglomerates of business that I will take what I can get for now. I'm sorry, man. Like, you can feel away. Like, if you think about it, bro, we only been able and allowed to vote for 65 years.
It's giving him.
So I don't, okay, difference in opinion, that's fine. But I think that we've only been allowed to vote for 65 years, right? So sometimes it kills me when people are like, elections don't matter, voting doesn't matter, and these things and this and that. But it's like, look, we've only had 65 years in order to invoke change. It's gonna matter. At some point, we are gonna be the majority. We're gonna be able to change and swing elections however we would like. We're seeing it now with Texas being a purple state, not red or blue in some of these elections, but purple. So then I come and I use that same approach when it comes to these big businesses and the things that they're doing. I am not pleased, but I am not upset. So I don't think social injustice is played out. I think that, don't get me wrong, we asked for, equality, education, and equity. We didn't ask for chicken and watermelon flavored candles, but that's what I want.
I would, going off of what you say, I'm not against you. I ain't mad at you. I see you. But I also think, especially now in the time of internet and social media, why not? We definitely have the power to go ahead and switch it and still put our money to Black-owned businesses. So, okay, Target, cool, you got these T-shirts. I'd still rather go ahead and go buy a T-shirt from a Black-owned business. Bath and Body Works, cool, you got these candles. I'd rather go and put my money to a Black-owned candle company. And it's also something to teach the next generation. One thing that I've heard old folks say, before integration, all their money was spent at a Black-owned business because that's all they could go to. And then money stayed within their community. And now that, like I said, I'm not against you, but now that these big corporations are carrying, sure, we can get what we can get, But it's like, okay, oh shit, I could get the shirt at Target for real quick instead of just ordering it from a black-owned business online.
I'm sorry, I think I may have miscommunicated. My preference is always to shop a black business.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But
Yeah,
I guess I'm using it in the form as the marketing of
Right.
social
Okay.
justice.
You're saying
Yeah,
being intertwined to mainstream.
Yeah, I'm like,
Oh, okay,
I
gotcha, gotcha.
thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay.
They treated blackness as if it was an underground mixtape, but now he's saying we are signed to a label and
Yeah,
mainstream.
now we on the radio.
And when you sign to that label,
Okay.
it comes with certain things. Yeah, that's a great. And when you sign on that label, just like any other rap artist, it comes with things that you may not agree to, but you have to do that in order to get your name out.
Changing your style a little bit and okay, all right.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
I think like what we're seeing too is like it's kind of the first step is really a checkbox for these organizations, these companies. So it's like, okay, we checked it off, we put this marketing out there, we put this out there, we're showing our support. And so I feel like at this stage that we're at in regards to what they're doing with marketing and promoting social justice and change and stuff like that, they're just able to sit in that. The organizations, the white people in charge, the CEOs that we're not at the tables for, but want to be. I think with them, it's kind of just like, okay, I think we're good. We're going to ride this train of we checkboxed everything. And so now it's just like, we need to tell them like, what's next? What's the second part? Because with now they're just riding the checkbox. And again, I ain't hating on them. I mean, they're still getting their coins and I'm just not in those spaces. I'll get there one day. But I think it's now we have to have it, maybe even as a community, black and brown communities, we have to be like, okay, I'd like to see this. I want to see this because I think that was the first thing we did. It's like, we need to see us. We need to be out there, put us out there. And so now it's like the white people are like, okay, well, what do you want next?
I just feel like there's missed opportunities. Like, yes, some attention is better than no attention, right? But all attention ain't good attention, right? I just struggle that as we continue to progress in any social justice movement or movements, it becomes important that we do not take away from the core reason as to why the movement is even happening in the first place, right? And why that social change and social justice need to be a part of the process. I think what's happening, we are literally seeing the commodification of blackness, right? And I think we've always seen it, but we're seeing it more so now, where everybody wants to hire.
Break that down for our listeners who are not SAT word savvy.
Boy, go to hell.
Me being the listeners.
We are seeing blackness be used for capital gain, right? So people want to buy black because it's attractive to do so right now, right? It's a trend. And if I can be honest with you, it's always been trendy to be black, right? And whether people knew it or not, and whether people wanted to admit it or not, being black has always been in style. However, I think now what we're starting to see is that I am fearful, and I'm this may be an unpopular opinion. I'm fearful that the people who are, I'll say, non-black folks, okay, non-black folks are watering down social justice to the point where black folks won't know what true social justice looks like.
I think, and I don't want you to get into this mindset, and I could just be spitballing here, but like it's almost like, since we're using music references, it's almost like if you are, you know what I'm saying, Wu-Tang Clan, or if you are these old school rappers from back in the day, you following me already, it's like they see the Baby Keems, or they see the Lil Uzi Verts, or they see the YNW Mellies, and they like, oh, that ain't rap music. That ain't gonna cut it, man. We need more of this. And I don't want you to get caught up in that mindset. Social justice to me is still social justice. It's just that we don't have to go through the same things that our ancestors went through in order for us to achieve the place that we want to get to go. That doesn't make it any less watered down. It just means it's a different medium.
Yes, and I will also say, it also should not be us assuming that when money is involved and a check is involved, particular, right? So like, okay, let's like the NFL. It's like if the NFL posted, y'all, we're hiring 10 directors of inclusion for the NFL. It's a global wide search. Anybody can apply. So at best, that salary is going to be what? $150,000, $200,000. Let's say on a really astronomical high end, they say this person gets paid $200,000 a year. $200,000 a year times 10. How much is that? $2 million? $2 million? So $2 million. You make on any given Sunday billions.
Right.
So you see what I'm saying? I'm not saying it's not a step in the wrong direction, but I'm saying it's merely a half of a drop into the bucket of what all the possibilities can actually be done and actually actualized if people were to. And I don't want our next generation to be like, oh yeah, well you know, Papa Hero, they're getting 20 directors of inclusion.
Right.
Like, oh wow, you know, it was 10, you know, it was 10, 45 years ago. I said, maybe it should have been goddamn 150 at this point. Because they drug Colin Kaepernick through the mud. We should never get satisfied. Yeah, no, but that's the point. Contentment, right? At some point, are we getting content with social justice? And so you actually did a great segue to the next question. What do y'all consider to be social justice at this point?
So before we segue, I want to add just a little bit onto what y'all were saying.
Yeah.
I do feel like, and I mean, I guess kind of going to your next question too. When, especially nowadays, when I think of social justice, I think of social media. Because definitely, I feel now that those two are tied together in our modern age. And social media, I think, has both helped but also harmed social justice. Because we have, even talking more on an individual basis, we have a lot more people, okay, you go to a protest, you take your pictures, you post on social media. But what else do you do after that? Because it's taking away the seriousness of it. Walking down the street is only going to do so much.
Now, is that social justice or is it activism?
Nah, I guess more of activism. I'll be real.
Which activism is a byproduct,
byproduct,
of social justice. So I'm not saying it's wrong, but to your point, it does water down that activism.
And I think also another thing with that, with social media, it gives people this idea that social justice and activism is this one thing, when really there's a variety of things. You know, one thing I always think about when I think about social justice is how many names in the story of the civil rights movement we have lost because people have been, quote unquote, working in the shadows because they are not out marching across the bridge on Selma, but they're doing voter registration drives. They're doing sit-ins. And there's so many names that we don't learn of. And it's still the same today. And I think about especially differently abled people that cannot do your traditional marches or cannot do your traditional social activism and but are still doing so much work that if you think about it can be a whole lot more influential than just taking a picture of you walking down the street.
Well, I have a question though. Should we be comparing social justice, how it was done in the past, to now that times in our lives have changed so much?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely some things that we can borrow from the past, but there's also things that are different because we have different issues. You know, a lot of things of the past was fighting against segregation. Segregation is still present nowadays, but it's not as large of an issue.
Now it's more systemic racism that I think we fight against more than anything on a professional level, an educational level, a business level. I think we fight against more systemic racism than ever in all facets. And I think, again, like you said, segregation was the biggest thing that I think we fought against. And I think we're fighting now more than ever for the equality of all black people, not just straight men, not just straight women, you know what I'm saying, not trans people, all, you know what I'm saying? So, and back then it was like, well, if you ain't straight, this movement ain't for you.
Right. And you can help out with the movement, but just stay in the background.
It kind of still is like that for all you Dr. Umar followers. Dwayne, what do you consider social justice at this point?
What do I consider social justice at this point? I feel like it's a difficult conversation or a difficult thing to answer because I think social justice now for us, it's going to require innovation. I think it's difficult for us to be able to try.
You doing your fucking thing.
I'm trying today. I let y'all talk in the beginning, but now I'm here. Right, exactly. I was in the back of the bus.
I need to shut up when you talk.
But I do think it's in that sense of where it's just like, I don't know if I can actually answer that for you because I do feel maybe it has been whitewashed in a sense now of being able to even answer what social justice looks like because it is going to require innovation. I don't feel like we can be comparing things back to the 60s, the ways they were doing things, to compared to now what we're doing. Like, that's a huge gap in time. Although it doesn't feel like it's like, that wasn't that long ago. We still have people that are alive during that time. But we are, a lot has changed. And I think it's going to require innovation from the Black and brown communities themselves. It's going to require us to put pressure on our white counterparts to provide that innovation besides us telling them what to do. But like, what are we going to do as a community for each other to build each other up as these different conversations happen? And then it's just like, okay, now white people, it is your turn. What do you think? What are you going to bring to the table? And it's like, well, I have my checkbox. Next step. There's no more. Yeah, we got past that. Yeah. Move forward. I've seen myself in your Target ads. That's great. Thank you for that check. What's next? What would you like? What do you want to see, sir?
Because it's not like we're not qualified to sit at these tables. That would be a different question. If we weren't qualified to sit at these tables, that'd be totally different. But that is not the case. That's not what we're facing here. Right. We're facing a deliberate move to keep us from the entire building that the table is sitting in. because they fear that once we get there, they will be held accountable for the things that need to change. And I say this all the time. People can feel away, black people can feel away if they want to, but this is the truth. We did not get here into this segregated, systematic racist system on our own. Right or wrong?
Right. You're right.
So we will not get out of this systematic, segregated system on our own. We will either by force or by choice, you white people gonna help us get to a better place.
Right.
Point blank period.
Y'all put us here.
And when I say help, I don't mean we need y'all help. You're gonna have to.
Right.
But I wonder though, back to Harold, what you said, remember how in the sense of like 10 people isn't enough for in regards when we talk about NFL. But is that, to me, is that our first steps? Is it 10 so that we can grow to 15, to 20, to 30?
You know, I feel like this. I think when it comes to social justice, what I consider social justice, I think a multidimensional approach, right? I think it is the hiring of black and brown people. I think it is the investment into black and brown organizations. I think it is the policy revision and creation that's necessary to help support equitable experiences. I think it's a variety of things. I will say this, and I'm chewing on what you said. I'm chewing on it because yes, we did not get here by ourselves. But I wax and wane on the involvement, the level of involvement I want to be had in us getting out, you know, metaphorically speaking, in the hands of our white counterparts. And I say that because I feel like our best and maybe untapped resource is actually the community building and like the unification of all black and brown folks as one entity. So I think about oftentimes how as black people, and I'm talking from my experience, I can talk all day till I'm blue in the face around the enslavement of my people, what life was like prior to enslavement, how enslavement has then impacted the generational issues that we have now. But I also recognize I'll be remiss if I did not bring in people from indigenous backgrounds and Native Americans and all the ways in which in history we have completely erased their existence and their plight. And so in my head, I was telling a friend this, like if, in my personal opinion, if black folk and Native American folk got on the same page.
I feel like, I guess my biggest thing is I feel like, although.
And we're not like beefing or nothing. I also don't want that to be the. But like I'm saying, like if we really, because and I hate to say like this, but there is a totem pole, or not totem pole, sorry, there is a hierarchy, and as a result of the hierarchy, black folk are at the bottom, and right just beneath black folk are Native American indigenous people, who do not get talked about unless we're doing a land acknowledgement, unless we're talking about casinos, unless we're talking about land reservations. Other than that, we do not think about them. And we have to be prompted to think about them in the ways I just mentioned.
And while I agree with you, I also think it now becomes a job of definitely other communities. Because I'm coming from the Latino community, and while there are Afro-Latinos, there's also a lot of anti-blackness in the Latino community as well.
For sure.
And one thing that I wish I could just announce to the entire Latino community is like, hey, we have a whole lot more in common with black folks than white folks. So many Latinos try to assimilate into white culture because they say, oh, this is our way out of oppression. Yes. When I'm like, bitch, turn your ass around and come here. Right. You know, because, and that, you know, I'm sure that could apply to definitely many other communities of color. So there's also a lot of work, not just on our side, but also like going to different communities because like, bitch, turn your ass around because these white folks are always going to see you as an other. Stop trying to assimilate with them and come unite on our side because let's be real, if we take all non-white groups, we will outnumber white people.
That's my point.
Right.
That's why I was like, do we really need white folk? Like, and I don't mean, and this, I want you, the Black Gray Views is not in no way, form, or shape endorsing the obliteration and or eradication of any particular race, ethnic group. Man, also in black folk and non-white people of color need to really figure something out, come together because I think we all benefit if we were to unify our missions and values and aims.
But I mean, it's terrifying though if you think about it in the sense like, and playing devil's advocate, I think it's terrifying in the sense of where it's just like, yes, we do want them to turn around. I also don't blame them for that fear. They see what's happening to the black community. So it's kind of just like, oh, I join your team, but like, damn, are we going to win are we going to win a battle or are we going to win the war? Like, you know what I mean? So I do agree. I know, right? I'm really thinking. But I don't blame them for that fear. I mean, I think we have that same fear, but now it's in the sense of where it's like we have to turn that around. We have to do different. So I think it's gonna take some time for us to really be able to get those other communities to really be like, hey, look at us, like get our numbers up, help us. But again, I can't put that against them, because I think if it was me on the other side, I'd be like, well, the white people are winning though. Like, what are you? Okay, so you got a couple pros, but a lot more cons. They got a shit ton of pros, not that many cons.
Okay, sure, they got a lot of pros. Bitch, they're not giving you all those pros. You still speak Spanish. You still have an accent. It may look like they have a pros, but you're not getting all those pros. So I think that's also something to just make more awareness of. As much as you act white, as much as you look white, like look at me. I could easily pass for white. But when I come into a white space, bitch, I am sniffed out like a dog, like, wait a minute. Your eyebrows a little too thick. Bitch, your hair's a little too curly when it got wet. Wait a minute. Your accent, where you from? Are you from New Orleans? Right. Wait a minute, bitch. You're right. So, like, I feel like I'm with you that it takes some education, though, too, to say, hey, it looks like they got a bitch. Them pros ain't for you, though.
That grass ain't that much green.
Because as soon as you get to the first floor, they moving up to the penthouse.
I'll just say one thing. I think that kind of responds to everything that's being said right now. And when it comes to all of the different black and brown people coming together to help uplift each other, I think the biggest thing that you run into is that we as black people, a lot of times we feel like everybody else kind of got their 40 acres and a mule. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why a lot of times when it comes to Native Americans, you know what I'm saying, when it comes to other disenfranchised minorities, we are kind of jaded, because when it comes to their injustices, we stand up and we speak up every time. Mm-hmm. And now when they feel like, oh, well, we've gotten our just due, and it comes to our injustices, I don't feel that same support sometimes. Mm-hmm. So when I say, in a perfect world, I want black justice to be supported and pushed by black people only. But that's not a perfect world. So I'm not saying we need white people. I'm not saying we need white people. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying I would like to have some of that privilege, because I know it's going to get me into the doors that I may not be able to get myself into.
If they can leverage it to be productive, we can talk about it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So let me ask you. So here's this. As we get ready to wrap up, I want to know from you all, I want to give y'all a couple seconds to marinate. What is a social justice issue people don't often think about?
Well, I'm glad you asked.
I'll just drop something on the folk that they probably, because we always hear about it from a racial context. We always hear about it from LGBTQ plus context. We always hear about it from even a religious context. But what is the context that people oftentimes don't think about?
I think one thing that I've noticed a lot is a context of differently abled individuals. Because what I think about is there's this video where differently abled individuals did a protest in the Capitol in DC, and video of that resurfaced on January 6th when there was the white riots, and I saw like a lot of comments, and unfortunately from black and brown people, they were like, what are they gonna do? This bitch in a wheelchair, this bitch don't have no arms, this bitch look like Patrick the Starfish. And I'm like, y'all, first of all, this is two completely different situations. But I'm like, damn, why is it going to that? So, and even today, even with ADA, there's still a lot of ways that differently abled people, and even that comment, most people will know disabled people and not know that a lot of individuals prefer differently abled people, but are still marginalized and put out in a ton of other social movements. And so I think that's one thing that people often forget.
I think I'll take the one of the most obvious routes, social justice and mental health. I think that is one of the biggest places where social justice is not really adhered to, because you have the young man, and his name leaves my mind, so please forgive me. I believe Alaska, the young man who had. He was walking down the street, going home. Elijah McCain. And he was murdered by a policeman because the policeman did not understand that this young man had a mental health issue. Yeah. And so I think on the grand scheme of things, we need everyone to be educated on mental health so we can therefore have advocacy in social justice situations where it's needed. Yeah. Because the same thing happened, when they went to go do a wellness check on this lady, and I believe her son or somebody living in the house had, again, a mental health disability. Yeah. And they ended up killing him because they did not know how to respond to this mental health disability or ability, whatever the case may be. I think that we need to have more social justice in those situations because then we can have more empathy.
Yeah, well, Ziggy took mine because I was thinking the exact same thing.
Great mind.
With my mental health background, I completely agree because. Okay, thank you. Master's degree. Master's degree in mental health counseling. So thank you. Saving lives every single day. Every day. But anyways, back to the conversation. Always put me first. But I think in regards to adding to that, I think why we need to, but the problem with that is, I agree, but it's going to take the Black and brown communities to start taking it seriously and stop joking.
Yeah.
You know, don't like, and again, I think I see a lot of times, like, I think we see it like the queer Black community where it's just like, well, I got to pick a struggle. No, I need you to be able to put that anxiety first because you're not going to be able to live your identities if you're struggling with that anxiety. And so we also have to quit joking where it's like, suck it up, you're fine, like, it's okay, like, we got so much other stuff going on, like, people are not fighting for us. No, let's talk about that. Tell me more about your mental health. Tell me more about the depression. Why aren't you getting out of bed? Why are you isolating yourself for 2 weeks? Why haven't I heard from you? We need to talk about that and stop joking about it. It's very quick to do that. And there's just so many like more shows and different things like that kind of promote it too. But we have to do better about joking about it. I even joke about it too, where it's like, we'll see it at times where it's like, oh, I want to kill myself. Like, this is too much. Yeah. That's, again, we have to stop joking about that. Yeah. It's very difficult. I've had to catch myself and making sure that I kind of do that too. I'm not perfect, even as a mental health professional myself. Like, I'm not perfect. But we do have to start embracing that and tell me more about that. Like, oh, I didn't know you were struggling with that. Yeah. What's going on? And normalizing it, validating, providing that empathy, which again, empathy is hard because that means you truly understand. Yeah. So I wouldn't say that. I always tell people when I'm talking with like my clients and students, stuff like that, like, I hear how that could be difficult. Not like, oh, I understand that. If they're another Black,
I'm still in that.
You should. You're welcome, TM. As well. So I think, yeah, we just have to take that seriously.
So the issue I want to bring up is actually going to be based off of body shaming and particularly fat phobia. As a person who identifies as a fat person, I'm okay with that. Ain't stop shit. You know, it hasn't. I think I struggle oftentimes when I go into not only just the stores and it's hard finding clothes that fit and fit comfortably. I also think of ways in which being fat has also resulted in people losing their lives and the way we demonize plus size individuals. I think about the young lady who lost her life, or I don't think she lost her life. She got shot after she was fighting a young lady that came to her house to fight her. And she ended up having a knife, again, trying to protect herself. And the police showed up and shot the young lady who was actually the one being attacked in her driveway at her home, whose family called the police for the other young lady, right? And when you look at their body types, the other young lady had a slender build, and not knocking people who have slender build, but like obviously the person who ended up getting shot was the person who was the plus size individual. And I think about a lot of women who I feel like, I'm using women in this notion, but just people in general, who really get doubted in terms of their experiences, get shamed, get really isolated about their experiences due to their plus size. I'm going back to my hill I'm willing to die on. I believe we would have believed Monique the first time if Monique was not a plus size actress. I think because she's a dark-skinned woman and also because she's a plus size dark-skinned woman, I think the community, we second guess every fucking time. I think people, I'll use another example, Kelly Price. Kelly Price was dealing with COVID. She went isolated. And granted, maybe she could have, that's debatable. Maybe she could have told somebody, maybe she couldn't. But also, nobody's owed your whereabouts at every given moment of the day. She ended up, this whole thing circulated where she went missing. People cracked jokes about it. People didn't take it seriously. Again, because Kelly Price is a plus-size, dark-skinned woman, I think she got played. And so I said to say that we really need to do a better job in the queer community, in all communities, but definitely in the queer community, really getting past fat phobia. I've seen guys walk past me, not give me the time of day, and even, I guess, diminish, I guess, my worth into the queer space because I'm a bigger guy. Whole time, the ones that they're trying to get that is not necessarily a bigger guy is the guy that has slid in my DMs. So, started to say,
that's not just in the queer space either. But I feel
hello?
Like that's real. That's real across the board. Like
yes,
I think a lot of
absolutely.
men. I'm sorry, dang, I feel like I'm
go ahead,
taking.
go ahead.
I feel like a lot of men, when it comes to women that they think are heavier women, they diminish them, especially in the sexual space, to where you can only give me oral sex, or this is what you are good.
They want to love you behind the camera, but not in front of the camera.
Not for everybody else.
But baby, let me tell you something. I've never been in front of a camera, but understand that if you're gonna love me, I'm going to be in front of that camera. I'm gonna be the main feature and not the motherfucking supporting actress. And that's gonna be that on that. And on that point, we're gonna wrap up and we're gonna come back. We're gonna go to a quick commercial break. Stay tuned as we wrap back up with the Blackberry View. All right, welcome back to the Blackberry View. We're back to get to the last part of our show today, y'all. And so that goes to our WTF moments, why those feelings. And we're going to really talk through what you all feel and get kind of more into your individual perspective. So the question I have for you all is that when it comes to social justice, what are some ways that you reflect on that you could have been a better social justice advocate?
I think a way that I could have definitely been a social justice advocate earlier on in life, I think from birth to maybe up until I was 24, maybe 25, I would say I was homophobic. And it took a lot of me getting close to family and friends who at the time had not told me, what their sexual preference was, which really doesn't matter. But they hadn't told me what it was, and then I realized how much I love those people and how much I made them feel minimized around me because they couldn't be themselves. And I think that was something that when I was by myself and I thought about things like that, it really hurt my heart because if you know me, I got a big heart and I love hard, especially the people that are close to me. And so I think the biggest thing that I could have done and can still do is that when it comes to those people around me who do have a sexual preference, because it's not none of my business or regardless of what it may be, is to have their back and is to stamp out those myths and hold my other heterosexual cisgender male friends and counterparts accountable when they try to be like, oh, that shit gay, or you know what I'm saying, or they have those derogatory terms, or they use the word faggot, or they use all of this wild shit to describe the LGBTQIA+ community. Because I think if I can do that, it only started at home. I can't save the world, I'm not Superman, but if I can do that in my little community, then when they're out with their friends, they think about me or they hear that in their head like, damn, that nigga Ziggy get on my ass or some shit like that. So I think that's something I can do.
If I can also add something in there to something you said, and this is for everybody. I know a lot of times we often default to certain language, which is like preference. I would offer to anybody when discussing people's sexual identity, sexual orientation, I would encourage veering from preference because for a lot of people, if not all people, it's not really a preference. I don't think anybody would want to choose to be gay knowing all the things that people have endured who have identified gay as gay or queer or lesbian or anywhere in the LGBTQ plus spectrum. And so recognizing that like people are holistically who they are and not so much choosing to be who they are, if that makes sense. So I always want to
I think I use sexual preference because I'm like shit. I choose to be with women, so I guess that. But again, that's probably another straight man.
No. It's good. It's good. These are ways in which we got to just unlearn. And I was challenged by that because I would say preference. Somebody told me like, well, are you choosing to be gay because you don't want to be women? And I'm like, no, I'm not attracted to women. It's like, so why is that that's not a preference? Preference means there's an option. There's like there's an option for us to be different. And if that's not the case for you, then that's who you holistically are. So I just want to add that in there, just as context.
Sexual identity is not like shoes. I don't choose slides or Nikes.
Right. It's fluid, right?
I think that's why, like with Harold thinking of that, like I think it's just there comes with there's power behind language that we use. So it's just making sure in these moments where we can have that space where it's kind of just like, hey, like you actually say this. I've educated and learned that it's this instead. So I think it's just providing those moments, but again, knowing the intentionality behind it and understanding too.
What about you? When can you have been a better advocate in social justice?
I think for me, I like to focus on the two emotions that I think is fueled by social justice and advocacy, which I feel is guilt and anger. Guilt, I think, has stopped advocacy, it stops action, it stops change, where anger fuels it. So I think within myself, it's being able to be aware of those emotions and being able to balance them really, and being able to figure out, okay, like, why am I acting like this? Why is there so much fear? Why is this behind it? Oh, I feel guilty. Like Brene Brown says, like, guilt means that I did something bad. And so it's being able to acknowledge those moments and those paths where it's like, oh, I could have said that. I could have did this. I could have spoken up. That bystander intervention. Like, I could have did these things. Not sitting in that guilt, just acknowledging like, okay, now how can I do, like when I talk about it with like my client stuff, it's like an emotional replacement. So what emotion now am I going to replace with this guilt that I have of not being able to do something? Maybe, again, anger also has its negative connotations to it, but anger, how I talked about before, fuels change, fuels activism, fuels social justice, And so being able to replace that in the sense of like, okay, how am I going to take away that guilt? Let me add some anger behind it. Let me get some teeth into it, some grit. So I think in those moments where I've missed that, I think it's being able to acknowledge that emotion and be like, okay, how can I change that? What are the steps I can do? It's not going to be something also that's just so easy to flip that emotion, because it's the pattern that some of us do. Like we think of white guilt. It's easy for them to be like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like all this guilt that just comes up for them. And so it's no one's there to educate them where it's like, change that. You don't want to feel guilty anymore. You don't want to feel bad. Change it. What are we going to do differently? And so breaking it down for people where it's like, change the emotion behind it. You can no longer feel guilty. Put some anger behind it. What would you do if it was you?
I think for me, it would be definitely jumping back and not using my appearance as a privilege. Because like I've always identified as Latino or Afro Creole. I always found growing up, I always found myself in Black and Latino spaces. But getting into college, because of my appearance, finding myself in being accepted or assimilated into white spaces and not speaking up when I am in those spaces. Like one particular example, I remember I was in line at Subway on my college campus. A Black Lives Matter protest marching to the student union. And like, I'm here for it, but I hear a white girl behind me. She's like, oh my God, not this shit. And in my mind, I'm like, pinche gringo. But then I'm like, now thinking back, I'm like, Konya, why didn't you say something? Like, she would probably have listened to me easier because she would think that I'm white and in her community than she's listening to these Black and brown people that are literally marching. And so I think it's thinking back like, yes, while I strive to state, y'all, I ain't white, I'm Latino, I'm Mexican, I'm Creole from New Orleans, but just using my appearance like, well, bitch, you think I'm white, so let me see what you'll at least listen to from me, that you won't listen to brown and Black folks. So yeah, that's one thing I think I definitely dropped the ball in the past. I'm trying to fix going into the future.
I think for me, the ball that I have definitely dropped in terms of being a social justice advocate is honestly to Ziggy's point. I think just my own internalized sense of homophobia. And we rarely, I don't say we rarely talk about it, we don't talk about it enough around the ways in which homophobia is internalized within the queer community. And just based off my background, alone, I grew up really in a very like boxed in perception of what it means to be queer, what it means to be gay. I mean, at one point I was that guy who was like, if I date a dude, he got to be super masculine. He got to be, can nobody even think that he's gay? Of course, me projecting. I don't want to hang around anybody who has any feminine traits. I got to walk this way, talk this way, do this, do that, say this, say that. And I struggled finding productive relationships in the queer community because of my limited perception of what it means to be Black and gay. And so fast forward, I think for me, I'm daily working through that because I surround myself with people who are overtly feminine, people who are a mixture of masculinity and femininity, and people who are actually masculine and okay with being masculine and not in a toxic way, if that makes sense. And so I have to work through that. I had a relationship a couple years ago that actually was my first relationship with somebody who had overt feminine expression in ways that I wasn't used to. For example, this person wore eyeliner. And if you were talking about going to be dating a guy who wore makeup in any capacity, I would have said, hell no, that's not, no. That's no.
It's a no for me.
No, it's a no for me, dog. However, he wore that, and I found myself asking questions like, like, why you wear eyeliner? Like, why do you gotta wear eyeliner? He was like, it just makes my eyes, appear, a certain way, and I like the way it makes them appear. And I was like trying to fish for it more. Like, do you wear any other type of makeup? Like, you got a whole Mac set, seeing if he's gonna be like, hell yeah, I'm be like, well, this conversation is over. I'm not proud, but this is what it was. And because I liked that person because I actually liked them, it made me have to sit for a second and really check myself around. If you like this person, this is gonna come with being with this individual, and are you okay with that? And are you willing to accept the person in their fullness thereof? And so for me, I recognized that I had to do some work, but because of that relationship, that brief moment in time, I am now in a better place. And I can see me dating a man who, it's something about a man in a crop top. It's something about a man in a crop top. Who's able to get under a car and work on it, and also is willing to throw ass in the club. It's balance. It's duality. But it's just me.
Get your man that can do both.
There you go. We love that. We love it here. Go clean the gutters, but then come back and let's do each other's nails. I love it. It's the range for me. But yeah. So as we get ready to wrap up, I want us to go into our final section, tips and dips. Thank y'all for sharing your individual feelings. So the tips and dips is simple. I want to just know give the charge to people. So if somebody watching this episode is saying, okay, I hear all that y'all talked about, I feel motivated and empowered, I want to go out and do something, what should I do? Like, encourage me, make me get up off my ass, out of my chair, take out my AirPods, and go put forth action in anything that we talked about today. What would be our charge to them?
Well, Earl, I'm glad you asked. Here at the Blackberry View, we know that it is part Z, part T, and all love.
Wait, no. That's not how it goes. That's not how it goes.
Part T, part shade, all love.
Yeah.
I think number one, I mentioned it earlier, is black capitalism is not the answer to all problems. I think a lot of times we think that the more money that we have, the more change that we can invoke, and that is not typically the case. Just because you have money, that does not make you a good person. So we need to focus on the internal work versus the external work in order for us to be better as black people and encourage the black plight. The second thing is, black men, read books about other things other than finance and manipulation.
Ooh. So I can't read 48 Laws of Power?
Yeah, no. It's cool. It's great. But I don't want to hear.
That book has a show
on every.
On black cis and men.
Once,
I don't know what
bro, I'll be honest. Once straight black men found out that reading was attractive to women, you know what we did? The first book we
got
went and
toxic
bought
books.
So read other books other than 48 Laws of Power. You got what's that? Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Oh my God.
The real estate books, man. Read other books, man. There's self-help books. There's mental health books. There's books about different experiences. There are a lot of different things you can read, man, if you are a book guy. So read other books that are about other things than finance and manipulation. Year-round unity, and not just when black injustice goes viral. I think that's the biggest thing, man. Be willing to lend a helping hand to all of your brothers and sisters in this thing. If you want to advance the black plight, don't just wait until you see a social injustice online and, let me share this to my Instagram page. That's appreciated. But what are you doing right now in your everyday life when it comes to, when you hear things that are off base when it pertains to black people? What are you saying? Are you interjecting yourself? You know what I'm saying? What are you doing at work to break the stigmas that they have around black people? Are you afraid to post black art in your office because you don't want somebody to come by and ask you? I mean, it's those very minuscule things. My biggest thing is that I think what we do as Black people is we have such a subconscious of wanting to make white people feel comfortable in our spaces that, in a lot of times, what we do is we minimize our Blackness. So it's like, ooh, because if I post this or if I put up this, well, don't worry about that, man. Year-round unity is what's gonna push the Black plight forward. And those are my Ziggy's tips.
I would say definitely go out into your local community and see what is needed. Because while we do have a national Black push and national Black agendas, I would say start in your own yard. Start, and especially if you are a non-Black individual, find Black-led organizations in your local community that are pushing for change. Start pushing for the change at home. And especially now in the age of social media, you can find them. Or you can talk to people that can help you find them. But start at home, especially in smaller towns, because these smaller and rural towns often get left out of a lot of these national conversations. So start in your own community and find those leaders and see, okay, what can I do to help my local Black community? And I want to emphasize again, Black-led organizations. Because there are times that organizations think they're doing good, but it's mostly just for show. I'm not gonna name drop, but so I think that would be the charge I would lead.
I think for me, I like to remind myself, and I tell some of my clients and myself daily basically, is I do WWDD. What would Dwayne do? So what I would do in these situations, I know, right? Thank you, Jesus.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug. What I do is specifically, I try to challenge myself kind of like on a yearly basis on selecting communities that I don't align with. And so for me this year, like my 3 focuses are focusing on women, focusing on trans lives, and then also focusing on the Latinx and Hispanic community, because those are areas that are my blind spots. I know because I can't walk into that space and say that I'm any of those individuals. So what I like to do and would lead the charge with is Google is your friend, people that are experts in the field, podcasts, all these different things out there. So finding that education year round to be able to educate yourself, to step from like, I know my identities, I feel like I have a pretty strong foundation, I'm good. I don't want to keep harping on just these. I want to be able to step forward and do more. I want to start impacting other communities. And I think that's something easy the Black and brown community can do, and also our white counterparts. So that's what I would leave you with.
I love that. So actually, y'all's like all y'all's kind of overlapping to mine. Simple activity. We all have group chats and all have centralized sources of communication. Get into that group chat with your family, your friends, whomever, and ask y'all list all your identities. And if you feel like people don't really have a expensive knowledge of what identities look like outside of race, you can go Google identity sheet. Just type identity. You can literally Google list of identities people have. And there's tons of worksheets, things, and images that you can drop into a group chat where people can have that as context. Here's what you should do. Drop it in there and allow them to start listening and really see how different or homogenous your group is. If everybody in there drops in, Black, straight, Christian, able-bodied, first generation, then I would say that there's probably not a lot of diversity amongst that group. And that doesn't mean just from a racial context. It can be from all different other factors. And so as a group, commit to finding opportunities to engage, to your point, with people who have difference of identity. Also, would you be surprised, because it's just like we halfway ask, like, how was your day? Not really expecting what you're going to say, not really caring what you're going to say. You'd be surprised what you may find when you ask a person, like, write down all the ways in which you identify. You may actually see in your group, on the other tip of it, that there may be somebody like, oh, I identify as a person who has a difference of ability. And you may be like, for real, bro? Like, I've known you all my life. Oh, yeah, bro, I got ADHD. And you would have never known that. And that literally just added a whole layer of context in that moment to, like, that explains so much when we go hang out, when we go eat, when we go drink, whatever that looks like, as to why you show up in this space and acting in a particular way. And I can be more sensitive, because whereas I was probably writing you off as being, naive and annoying, you actually navigate a difference of neurodiversity, neurological diversity, and you need to be understood and be able to be considered in a way that makes sense with how you navigate. So do that. It's simple. And then do that for your group, and then do that for your individual self, and recognize that like we cannot exist in echo chambers of homogeneity. We cannot all have people in our group that look like us, talk like us, walk like us. There needs to be some difference in some form or fashion. That's how we grow.
That's what homogeneity means, right?
Yes, homogeneity.
I just wanted to make sure for our viewers.
You better educate him, Dr. Brown.
I'm screaming. Look, I read one article. You know, that's all it takes. But without further ado, we want to bring this episode to conclusion. Please be sure to follow us on all social media platforms. It's on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at The Blackberry View. And that's Blackberry with the Q, not a CK. Thank you for tapping in with us for Black History Month. Stay black, stay beautiful, stay bold. And we look forward to seeing you next month.